Hello again, Eridos here. You can see this isn't exactly the most ideal of recording situations here. I seem to have misplaced my combat vest, so we're just going to be using my Darth Vader hoodie for the time being until we can find it. Must have gotten misplaced during the spring cleaning around here. You can probably hear my fan in the background. You can see my windows open. I was just recently doing another Let's Build video for the Dragon King. I'm not sure if you can see him on the table back there, but between the hardening agent and the nail polish remover to get super glue off my hands, trust me, you really don't want to be here right now. Anyway, enough about my Let's Build. We have a book review. We are going to be reviewing Queensblade Grimoire Snow White. Now, Snow White is actually going to be a very interesting character for anyone who picks her up. But first, as you know, this book came out in January. Now, why is it taking me until April to review this? Well, there's a good reason for that. You see, first, we're talking January in Japan. So any distribution companies here in the US would probably take about a few weeks before they could get it in stock, as I got this through Firelight Games. Then, of course, once it gets some distribution, it gets out to me, which takes another week or so. And then the longest part is actually waiting for an English translation of the book, which, of course, took until about May 31st. Not May, March 31st, sorry, I gotta get those months screwed up because of the same starting letter. And then, of course, after I get the translation, I had to play test the book and see how it actually works in-game, because I'm not just going to review the artwork, I have to review every aspect of the book, don't I? Well, anyway, Snow White is definitely one of the more interesting books because the artist has worked on other Queensblade books before. He's worked on Annalette, he worked on Risty, he worked on Tomoe, and I also believe he designed Shizuka, who is a character who, as I have stated numerous times, has never received a combat book despite being in the card game. The reason I bring this up is that they all appear in this book. Much like how the Marshland Witch could summon Aerie and her other servants, Snow White can actually summon all the other characters that the artist has worked on. So this is kind of like a greatest hits book. And indeed, I can't really go wrong with a character that actually uses Shizuka as a summon. And there are quite a few summons, as you can see here. She's summoning Annalette. And here she is summoning Shizuka. Let me see. I do believe there are the other summons in here. Oh. There she is summoning Tomoe. And, well, I'm not going to really look for Risty here because it would just take too long to go through the entire book to find all the summons, but again, you get the point. She can summon the other characters from the previous games, and she uses it using her magic mirror, which is basically her primary means of attack, as her primary means of attack is summoning. And of course, this is the item that can be disarmed from her. She can be disarmed of her magic mirror, but just because she loses her mirror doesn't mean she's completely disarmed. She still has the magic dagger and her magic apples. Yeah, they took the poison apples and turned it into a special ability for her. Which also brings up an interesting point. Despite being named poison apples, they don't actually cause a poison effect, which you would expect considering that they have poison in the name. But the poison apples do quite a bit of damage, and then there's also her ability called the Apple Infusion, where she infuses a bunch of magic into her apples, which does two effects. First off, it activates her most powerful attack, which is the Apple Bomb, which in playtest does a heap of damage. Like, it does so much damage that if you hit it at the right moment, you can just KO a person right in one hit. I mean, sure, you'd have to still do quite a bit of damage, but On anything below like 8 or 10, like anything below 8 or 10 hit points or body points, I would have to make sure I use the right terminology here. Anything below 8 or 10 hit body points is just going to be annihilated by her apple bomb. Again, not easy to hit with. Again, it's a high tier it's a high tier attack, so it's not going to be easy to hit with, but it can do a lot of damage, especially when used at the right moment. And it can only be used directly after infusion. Before infusion, or if you don't use it directly after using your infusion, you're not going to be able to use it again until you can use the infusion again. And infusion's other effect is that it actually increases a lot of Snow White's attacks when you use it. I believe it's either a +1 or +2. I'd have to check the translation again to be sure, but it's a pretty good boost to a lot of your basic attacks, and it never goes away until you're knocked down. So that means until you are knocked down, you still have that plus to your attacks. Granted, it's not all of your attacks, but it's a pretty good portion of your attacks, usually mostly of the summons. And if you're mostly going to be using summons with her and you use Infusion, you are going to mop a floor with an opponent pretty quickly. And her dagger cannot be disarmed, and she can still use the dagger as just a dagger. So if her magic mirror is disarmed, her dagger will still be in use, and it will still do damage. It will still give her the infusion. It will still let her use her apple bombs, and she can still throw her poison apple. So just because you're taking away her summons doesn't make her any less effective. In fact, you're just giving her more options to use her more powerful attacks. The artwork is the next thing we're going to have to discuss, because, again, it's Queen's Blade. Lots of suggestive content, lots of fan service. I say it's kind of on par with Annalette. Fairly high, but not in the higher tiers, like maybe the mid-range. Kind of, again, where Annalette is, where there is fan service, it's just not to the absolute levels where it's going to be uncomfortable for a few people. If you should you get this book, I would definitely suggest it. A lot of people are suggesting she is one of the highest caliber fighters in the Grimoire series. She does a lot of damage. She is able to still use a lot of her more powerful attacks even after being disarmed. And the artwork isn't as offensive as some of the higher tier offensive books out there. Again, still suggestive, still partial, but again, nothing terribly serious, especially if you watch anime. Anyway, that is my review of Queen's Blade Grimoire Snow White. And I will hope to see you again on my next video.